So, welcome everybody to another episode of our Industry Explorers Job Seeker series. Today, we're going to talk about a very, very, very important topic that I feel like not many people talk about too much. I have with me Jill Pestana of the STEM Thrive Guides. How are you, Jill?
I am wonderful. Thank you.
I would love for you to tell your life story in 1 minute. Are you ready?
I will do my best.
You're going to do great, I promise. All right, and go.
So I was born in LA area, but moved to Texas. So I've lived in Houston and then in Tehachapi, California. And I primarily moved those places because my dad actually worked for NASA. So I grew up in a very aerospace-centric family, science-oriented family. And I really loved music though growing up, and I had strengths in science, math, and music. So I decided to pursue physics for college. And during my physics stuff, I decided I wanted to become a battery scientist. And so I did everything I could, internships and all that, through many different work environments. And in graduate school, I was actually forced to leave by my advisor. And after I was forced, I eventually got my dream job as a senior scientist, as a battery scientist, despite all those obstacles. And I decided to start a business to help other people navigate the difficult situations that I experienced in my job. And that's the STEM Thrive Guides. And that brings us to where we are today.
Yes, I absolutely love that. That is incredible. So I do want to get into the STEM Thrive Guides. We've got a Facebook user online saying Jill is the coolest. And if I were to guess, I would guess that's Ben Leffel.
Probably.
Probably.
I'm so thankful to him for introducing us.
Oh, me too. Me too. And we have a couple other people watching. And guys, just so you know, you can ask us a question during this live stream. That's why I do live streams. I love how we can interact with each other. We can interact with the guests live. So, excuse me, if you have a question, just leave a comment below. Now, Jill, I want to ask you, first of all, can you tell us about the STEM Thrive Guides? Because I love what your business is all about.
Of course, yes. So the STEM Thrive Guides are online courses teaching how to navigate bias, harassment, and discrimination at work and school. And I specifically have courses that are for undergraduate students, as well as graduate students and early career professionals. And while I'm particularly framed around my own experiences as a woman in science and technology, they're really for anyone who's navigating kind of difficult situations at work. And I actually just put out a new mini course that's exactly how to navigate harassment, like how to document the harassment, how to recognize it, and things like that. We could talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish that I had your courses when I was an up-and-coming professional. I started working professionally in the entertainment industry when I was about 18, 19 years old. And there are definitely things that I would do differently if I knew then what I know now. So is there any story that really drove you to start the STEM Thrive Guides?
Yes. So like I said in my life story, I was a graduate student a few years ago and encountered a really toxic environment that damaged my health, both mental and physical. And it took me some time to realize that it was the harassment I was experiencing in that environment that was leading to these health issues I was facing. I didn't know that you could get sick simply from people, being sexist towards you.
You were physically getting sick.
I was getting these stomach pains that would happen after every time someone would harass me.
Wow.
And the doctors didn't know what it was. It was scary. Like I thought they diagnosed me with a chronic illness. But once I started practicing more self-care, like meditating, mindfulness, and things like that, setting boundaries with work, I recovered. And it took me a few years, but since then, it's always been in the back of my mind of how can I help others who are in that position? And I've always, being a woman in physics and engineering, I've always been a minority in my field. And so with that comes its own challenges. And I've always wondered, how can I help not only myself, but other people, other women, other people who are underrepresented in their fields thrive in their workplace despite these obstacles. And I paused for a moment of a lot of reflection over the past few years, basically, and realized that there's so much support around the the perpetrators of harassment. I've had instances where someone's harassed me, and when I go to report it, the person who did the harassment is basically mentored on how to get away with doing harassment. And I'm kind of left high and dry, like, how do I navigate this? How do I reach a situation where I feel safe and comfortable in my work environment? And that support doesn't really exist. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, where it's like, oh, but I've navigated all these situations. I've learned from them. I've reached justice a couple times. I can put all my information into a course that people could take, and because it is a professional development skill.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to recognize toxic behaviors. And for people who are listening and tuning in, I invite you to comment how you recognize toxic behaviors. I'll start. When I first started in the entertainment industry, I had a mentor who, helped me get my foot in the door and helped me get my first few jobs and was teaching me how to be a rigger. So this person would say nasty things about our coworkers. He would put everyone down behind their backs. Face to face, he would be all buddy with people, but to me in private, he would say things like, "Oh, don't listen to that person. They don't know what they're talking about. That person is an effing idiot." And as an impressionable 19-year-old, I was thinking, "Oh yeah, you're the only person that I can trust. You're the only person that I can learn from." And that was so not true. And that honestly was a very toxic coworker. It was a very toxic friendship. So that is one of my stories about how I recognize toxic behaviors, when people are saying bad things about others behind their backs. So how do you recognize toxic behaviors?
I think this is a big question that a lot of people miss the point on. The way to recognize toxic behaviors, this is like the secret, is when do you feel uncomfortable? When do you feel unsafe? That is when it's like an indicator that something's wrong. And I think so much of us, especially as a woman, I feel like I was socialized to kind of ignore those kind of warning signs and thinking, oh, maybe I don't know, what's best for myself, or give someone the benefit of the doubt. But that's really gotten me in a lot of trouble with these kinds of things. Because like you look at a mentor and go, this person's my mentor. They're supposed to show me the ways. They have this experience, and you give them so much credibility in that space and so much of your, trust.
And you know what? That kind of, hearing you say that reminds me of, childhood victims of sexual harassment or sexual trauma, when they're being harassed by their family. You see your family members as people who are supposed to be trustworthy, as people who are the authority figures. Parents are an authority figure. Your aunts and uncles are authority figures. They're people that you're supposed to respect and trust. So, that when you don't know who to trust, it can be very difficult to navigate these situations. And, we see it in the workplace as well. Here's a really good couple of comments that people have made. Shauna says, if you have to hide a relationship, there may be a problem. Absolutely true. I am guilty of that for sure. Very unfortunate when the victim does not have the best support. Yes, absolutely. And this is what we're here to discuss. If you guys know of how you recognize toxic behaviors, please comment below. If you have a question for Jill, please leave a comment below. So Jill, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, recognizing toxic behaviors is really the first step towards reaching any kind of justice or safety. And it's important, I think, as people are often underrepresented in their fields, you feel like you're in a whole new culture. You feel like you're not used to this environment, and you're having to learn the rules that go in this environment. In so many toxic environments, the rule is, listen to the person at the top. They call the shots. Don't show any signs of weakness. And these things that are really actually not conducive to a productive workplace, let alone happy employees. You want a culture of safety and a culture where you feel like everyone can speak up and share their thoughts and ideas, and at least a place where it can be discussed. And a lot of times when you have these toxic cultures, it's not only detrimental to the people in those systems, in both their health, their productivity, but also to the organization as a whole. And I mean, what else would you like to know about as far as recognizing toxic behaviors? Or
well, I actually have a question. You mentioned that you know that something is a toxic behavior when you feel uncomfortable and or unsafe. Now, I would guess that the counter argument to that is, oh, millennials and Gen Z and the following generation are weaker than, our generation, or, back in the good old days, this wasn't offensive, that wasn't offensive. So how do you draw the line between something that is truly detrimental to the workplace and to an individual's health versus someone who's more sensitive? Where do you draw that line? That's a loaded question.
It is unfortunate how people see sensitive people as being more weak. I will say, like, I'm a sensitive person, and it definitely does not make me more weak because I have more empathy for other people, and I'm able to really understand what somebody's going through and help them in that way. Or in a work environment, put me on any team and I can work with people because I know how to work with people. And being a sensitive person is definitely not a weakness. And if someone says, oh, like you said, millennials, like, they just want everything so nice. It's like, well, don't you want things to be nice? Like, don't you want to be treated with respect and valued for not just being in the room, but for your ideas and what you bring in that room? Like, we all want the same thing. And I think people just use certain language to put other people down. That's just the world we live in. And there's a lot of communication barriers with that. But I will also add that while it's important to recognize when we feel uncomfortable, the truth is that our legislation and laws don't protect every feeling of discomfort. And there are some instances where you may experience what you would consider harassment, but it isn't defined as a legal definition of harassment. And so if you were to take that and file a report, like pursue some kind of suing or lawsuit, it may not work out because that's not within the defined legislation. And so understanding how much you are protected by your legislation is so critical if you want to reach justice in one of the situations. But overall, if you can work out a situation where you go from feeling unsafe to feeling safe, you've won. Like, that's the goal.
So let's get back to legislation and navigating bias and harassment and discrimination in a little bit. And let's talk about how you actually identify healthy workplaces. We did get a couple more comments that came in. Someone said that I met people that were looking for the same behavior they'd had in the past that they recognize as love, basically looking to be harassed to feel loved. I think I've heard of something like that before, where it's almost like if you are talked down to, if people condescend you, and that's kind of how you grew up, and that's the only thing you know, that you see that as acceptable. So I think these conversations are very important because it's important to break these cycles. It's important to recognize your self-worth and to build on your self-respect. And honestly, when it comes to harassment in the workplace, I take myself as an example, because you can have the most confident person who is perfectly capable, and if this person is being harassed, you can take their self-worth down to zero, and it's very unfortunate and sad. We had another comment that came in from Kathy. She said, being emotional and sensitive makes you a stronger person with greater clarity. I agree. Yes. I definitely agree. I think that's emotional intelligence.
Yes, definitely. And on the comment about how some people need to feel loved by being harassed, we all have our own traumas from the past, and that's a huge part of the process of growing confidence and empowerment when we're navigating these situations, not just at work, but in our lives, is understanding where these traumas come from and working to heal those. And so if you're a person who does need to be harassed to feel love, maybe that's a moment where you need to think about, like you said, your own self-worth and work on, your relationship with yourself and how you want to be treated. I'm a big proponent of therapy. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes, definitely. Do you think if you are the type of person who needs to be harassed in order to feel loved, so those types of individuals, they already have a low sense of self-worth. So if you are able to recognize that you are in that situation, do you recommend that these people surround themselves with others who help them with their self-worth, who make them feel validated? And you did mention that you are a big proponent for therapy.
I am not a mental health professional, so I don't feel like I can really comment on that, but I definitely think everyone should be consulting some mental health professional. We all have our issues, we all have our stuff, and if I really try to act in a way that best supports my health and my growth, and that's how I love myself. And I really can't give advice on that.
Here's a really interesting question that came in. How do you communicate to a new work environment that you're a refugee from a toxic work environment and you may need some adjustment time without telegraphing that you're damaged goods?
This is a lot to kind of pick apart. So I'll take for my example of when I left graduate school. When I left graduate school, I was leaving an abusive work environment with a boss who was abusive towards me, would put me down and offered very little support. And as I was leaving, he told me like I couldn't become a research scientist because I didn't have the personality of one.
Wow.
And hearing that come from someone I respected and admired as a scientist, someone who I trusted to help me through a PhD program, was a big blow to my self-esteem and to my identity, because I wasn't sure how I was going to reach that career goal. And when I started interviewing at places, I felt like I had to hide the fact that I left the PhD program on bad terms. Not necessarily bad terms, but just I was forced to leave, and also I left for health reasons. So I didn't know if my future employer would be okay with that, and see maybe they would think I was the problem and not the environment, right? And so I the way I framed it was, I wanted to leave grad school because I found this opportunity and it was great, which is, part of the truth. And I think when you are going to a new opportunity, to look at the positive side, and that you're going into a new workplace, like it's going to be better, maybe, hopefully, if you're looking out for the right red flags. And also just the one thing that surprised me is after I was working at my company for a while, I found out that somebody I worked with went through the exact same thing as I did in graduate school. It turns out a lot of people go through these instances where they're abused or harassed in a work environment. And of course, like, you get PTSD, you get mental health depression from them. And it's unfortunately very common. And so understanding that, yeah, you're a refugee, you came from this toxic environment, but that's a total normal circumstance to find yourself in, unfortunately. And you may not want to broadcast it, but definitely it's okay to mention, I had, like, this happened in my previous environment. I may need a little bit more help understanding my job roles, or, how, like, I may need this extra support in the beginning. But communicating that in a professional way, in a way, you want to frame it in a way where your employer feels like you're going to be a team player, you're going to put your best foot forward, and you're going to be, you want to grow in this role and contribute a lot, and which is probably what you want to do to begin with, but frame in a way where the employer sees the benefit of supporting you, rather than just be like, I'm so hurt and broken. Like, sure, you may be hurt and broken. It's okay to be hurt and broken. But frame it in a way where you say, this is how I need support. This is how you can support me. This is how I can do my best job.
So for me, that kind of looked like, what's the communication like amongst your team members? How do you guys communicate? Do you have open communication? Are you very welcoming of questions? And I always want to make sure that a team that I join values communication. So, if the viewers want, if you comment like humans will hide what they consider to be a weakness, and it's unfortunate that society still views therapy as weakness. Yeah, it is definitely unfortunate. I think there's a lot of things about the way society thinks about certain things that is still unfortunate. The comments are just rolling in. Oh, I love this question. So I'll just finish my thought before I go to the next comment. If you want, we can create scenarios in the comments and kind of translate what it looks like to professionally communicate to your employer where you need support. So, everyone's story is so different, right? So I can only really draw on my own experiences. Jill can only draw on her experiences. Although I personally have friends who have been raped at work. I have friends who have had their asses squeezed at work. And I've had people who have been verbally abused at work and who have been made to feel stupid. I've been made to feel stupid. So if you want to comment below how you would want to communicate to an employer that you need adjustment time, think about what is it that you need adjusting to? And then how do you think that would look professionally? So like I mentioned, asking them about communication. How does the team communicate? And, are you very welcoming of questions? And again, from my own experience, I would watch out for people who talk about their coworkers in a negative way, because that's not going to be a very healthy work environment.
Yeah.
So I got a really awesome, I love this comment. I'd love to hear Jill's vision for how we can progress towards a more trauma-informed workplace requirement.
Yes. So right now, you know how workplaces pretty much are supposed to have, there's a mandated sexual harassment prevention training. And this just consists of legislation that you need to learn, as well as maybe some how to recognize bias harassment, what not to do is basically what it is. And there's also bias training that goes on. So how to recognize unconscious bias and work against it. Notice how none of these, though, are supporting the victims of this harassment. It's all kind of preventative, top level stuff. So if we can, sorry, I'm like word vomiting because all the ideas are just flowing from my head. So
all good.
Focus is on prevention, but there's very little focus on support. And so what this actually is in itself is a structure that's created to provide support to the perpetrators of harassment, but it leaves out support to the victims of harassment. If we wanted to shift the power dynamic so that the workplace supports people who are going through this trauma or going through difficult situations, we need to provide the trainings for those people on how to navigate those systems in place so that they can reach a place of justice. So right now, the role of HR often, and even organizations within a university like the Ombudsman Office, Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity, those structures are in place to actually just protect the workplace or the university from lawsuits. They're not necessarily reliable if you go with your problems with any kind of harassment. And by making more support for the victims and making it easier for someone to navigate those systems and report an incident, you're shifting the power to them, but also you're giving them a way to navigate the harassment without having to go through a lawsuit. If that makes sense. So it is preventing a lawsuit, just in a different way. And I hope I answered that question. A more trauma-informed workplace environment. I guess that also means, how can we make workplaces that recognize that trauma is a normal part of life and that we're all healing and working on our own traumas? And I think a big part of that is just if we can create spaces to help people feel safe in their work environment, And it's not even, I was reading this book called Teaching to Transgress by Bell Hooks. If you've never heard of Bell Hooks, please go read Bell Hooks. But Teaching to Transgress is this book. And in it talks about how can we create educational environments that are conducive to liberation. And the big point about creating, a lot of people say, let's create a safe space where we can talk about it. But it's actually what we need to be doing is creating community.
Okay.
Community is the key word. And so if companies, if businesses can create a work environment that's a community where people feel they belong, they feel accepted, they feel heard, they feel valued, that will lend itself to creating a healthy work environment where we won't be drained by a day of work. We'll get energy from a day of work, you know.
To me, part of that looks like self-awareness, and it has to happen on all levels of the hierarchy within a business, right? From the top level managers all the way down to the newest of hires. You know, everybody needs to have kind of an awareness of their surroundings. So if you're in a meeting and you are noticing that one coworker keeps cutting off another coworker or keeps interrupting, then no matter where you are on the hierarchy, it's kind of up to you to try to resolve that issue, because that is an issue, and you don't have to have an employee come up to you and say, hey, I have an issue with this person. You know, you shouldn't have to have an issue with an individual, but you know, there are certain scenarios in which case it is an issue. Like, to interrupt someone is completely rude. And that self-awareness can look like so many different things. A comment from my earlier question about how you can professionally convey that you may need adjustment time because you came from a toxic work environment. This is a nice one. I thrive in a culture of transparency and open communication where everyone can see the bigger picture. Do you see that as part of this company's credo? I think it's an awesome question. I think that's an awesome interview question, you know, because not just about the company interviewing you, you're also interviewing the company. Business is more like Tinder, right? It's a relationship, and relationships don't go one way. One-way relationships don't thrive, right?
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned community earlier, and someone else totally agrees. I'm so sorry, I can't pronounce your name, but she says, from my own experience, usually the team itself is built on friendships, and you need to adapt and get into the group. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not even friendships. I would say it can be even just mutual understanding and respect. You don't have to be best friends with your coworkers. No one's requiring you to, you know, meet up after work to go bowling.
Oh no, yeah, no, that's that is a fantastic point. You don't have to be best friends with your coworkers, but you certainly need to have a level of respect for each other. When someone from the group feels inferiority from your abilities, they start to be toxic for you. I have experienced that. You know, someone feels like you're gonna take over their job, I suppose. They, you know, you speak up, and I come from safety, right? So I've spoken out against safety, and then I had someone on the same job site as me be like, oh, well, what do you know? What do you, Miss ETCP, Miss Certification? And I go, actually, yes, I do have that certification. And then that kind of changed the dynamic there. But it definitely happens.
There's actually studies that show, so get this, there's a study looking at sexism in video games. And so it was through Halo. And it was looking at the role in how there's, you know, a social hierarchy amongst male players, where you have the players who are really good at the top, and then you have the other male players who are maybe less able to win at Halo, right? And then you have the women players that are playing the game. And they looked at the dynamics and the frequency as to how many times a male was being sexist towards a female through comments, or you could talk through those games. And what they found was that the lower the male's ability in the game, the more that he was harassing the women. And there was actually the men who were better at Halo were less harassing the women. And they think it's because when we're in a work environment that is more male dominant, for example, this is just a male dominant sexist example. I'm not talking about racism or other kinds of prejudices, but they think that because the women are coming in and kind of upsetting the existing structure, then the men must, or feel that they must, compete with the women for their position in that hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And we see these structures of domination throughout our whole society. This isn't just in a Halo game. This isn't just in your workplace. We see this everywhere. And it stems from, our society is white supremacist, it's patriarchal. And this is something that's echoed throughout our whole society. And so it's important to recognize that when you're experiencing someone putting you down because of their own insecurities, maybe you recognize, oh, this person just is putting me down because they want to feel better about themselves, which happens all the time.
Yeah.
And not only men do this to women, but women do it to women as well. And that's called tall poppy syndrome.
Oh, I hate that so much.
Yeah,
that's the worst.
Mean girl phenomenon. So,
yeah.
But when this happens, understanding that, sure, it's happening to you, but it's an echo of what's happening all over the place. You are not alone. This is something that you're going to come across a lot. And
to say that society is white supremacist and patriarchal is not to say that a white man can't also experience prejudices. It just happens less frequently.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're not singling out anybody,
Definitely.
because it can absolutely happen. There are men who are in abusive relationships. The woman is abusive, I never want to pretend like that kind of thing doesn't happen. We got some really great comments coming in. Here's an excellent example of recognizing a toxic work environment. I worked for a company that doesn't really appreciate the employees. Their slogan was, if you can leave, there are others waiting to get your position. Maybe don't work for a company where that's their slogan.
Red flag.
That's horrible. That is so horrible. I mean, they might as well just say, get in line and get your number, 24601. That is horrible. We got another question that came in. What is your opinion on weaponizing reporting systems as a form of workplace bullying? As in, they can't report me for X if I file a complaint about them first. Ooh.
Oh, man.
Okay, I'll share my opinion real quick.
Okay.
So we had the Me Too movement, right? And the counter protesting for that movement was all about the women who falsely report men as rapists, or, basically anyone who lies about something. I am totally against that. I absolutely hate that. And that it degrades actual issues that are in society. It invalidates other people's experiences. It's horrible. Not having integrity, you're hurting yourself. That's just my opinion in a nutshell right there. What do you think?
In workplaces where this is happening, I think it's just a huge red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, this is just one liner. It's hard to get the full context as far as what to do in this kind of situation. And the courses that I made, though, what I've done is I've reflected, I'm a scientist, I'm an innovative person. So I looked over all these instances of harassment and discrimination that I've experienced and looked at the core, what was going on in each situation and how did I navigate it and what worked versus what didn't work. And in my course, I actually share 8 different videos of scenarios. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what I've experienced, just the most, meaningful events in my life that have shaped how I navigate these kind of difficult situations. Mm-hmm. And what I used from all these stories, all these instances of experience, or the core themes from that I took out of and I put into 2 different frameworks. One's called the resilience mindset and one's the reporting framework. Mm-hmm. And so these are 2 tools that I've developed that anyone can use to navigate any kind of prejudice, harassment, discrimination, bias in your workplace, in school, even in your personal life, really. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some key lessons I've learned in life that are part of this resilience mindset and the reporting framework. And so I know people have all these different scenarios of, oh, this happened to me and that happened to me. But when your sole goal is to feel safe and comfortable in your work environment, how you get there depends on even the person. And so it's really hard to provide any kind of advice that's specifically tailored to a situation. And that's why I created these courses that really hone in on what you need to know, the essentials of what you need to know in order to navigate any situation, anything.
So those courses are available on STEMthriveguides.com, or is it the STEMthriveguides.com?
So I'm cheap right now. This is my side hustle. So I have it at www.thestemthriveguides.thinkific.com, which I could put a link in the show notes for everyone.
One more time, www.thestemthriveguides.thinkific.com.
Yes.
Awesome. I will have that scrolling at the bottom so you guys can save that and check it out at your leisure. Wow. I'm a Cali girl and I moved to the Midwest and apparently it's rubbing off on me. No, I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. We're getting some fantastic comments. Another red flag for a job environment is when you see ads for the same company over and over and over. It means that people don't stay. So that's probably another really good question for someone to ask in the interview process is, what's the turnover rate?
Yeah. Asking, why did the person before me leave? Or why did they leave this position? How long were they in this position? There's so many questions you can ask. And it's okay to ask these questions because you really need to vet your employer as much as they're vetting you to make sure that it's a good match for you.
Absolutely. And we're 37 minutes into this, and we're just now getting to the interview tactics part, which this is a great segue into that. So that's a good question is what's the turnover rate? And, where's that? I gotta flash that comment back up here. I thrive in a culture of transparency and open communication. Do you see that as part of your company's credo? That's a great question during the interview. What are some other good questions or interview tactics? I'm going to put that banner back up. Bam. Tell us some interview tactics.
Sure. So, you're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. That's the first important thing to keep in mind. And I would say there's different categories as far as what questions to ask. So I'm just going to read these categories. There's questions about the role itself and the environment. So this could be like, can you offer specific details about the position's day-to-day and responsibilities? How would you describe the work environment? How involved are the employees at structuring of their goals and tasks? You don't want a micromanager. What does it take to be a top performer? You don't want them to say overtime. And who do you think would be the ideal candidate for this position? How do I compare? Right. So then there's questions about getting to know your interviewer. A lot of times, when you meet someone, a lot of us have a gut feeling about someone. And if you're talking to this person, you're like, I don't want to spend another minute with this person in my life. Probably not where you want to go work, especially if this person would be your manager or a team member. So really paying attention to those cues as far as, do they make you feel comfortable? Are they welcoming to you in that environment? Do they listen to you or do they just cut you off? Do you feel heard and respected? Because how they treat you then is probably their best behavior. Or if they're being condescending and it feels like you're being interrogated during your interview, then imagine working there and trying to share your ideas. Like, you're probably going to get shot down.
Can I jump in with a thought?
Of course.
I recently interviewed Alan Stein Jr., and he is a performance coach, and he's worked with NBA professionals before they made it to the NBA, which is phenomenal. I'm so grateful to have had that interview with him. And he in the interview, he said that one of the worst things that someone can say about a leader is, I don't know what version of this person I'm going to get today. Am I going to get the happy version or am I going to get the stressed out version? And am I going to get the just got laid version or am I going to get the having a crappy day version of this person? And that means that this person is volatile Their mood can shift at any given moment or at any given hour or day. And, that lack of consistency from someone is also a red flag. That's also not going to be a very healthy workplace, especially if that person is your supervisor. So I had to throw that in there. Go ahead and continue with your list, because it is fantastic.
I have a list for you right here.
I love
it. And there was one experience that I had. I love like testing things out. Like, will this work? Because I've been going through this journey as one of the only women around in these male dominant fields for a while. And so I'm at the point where I'm trying things out. And then now I have this course, so I can just, whatever I learn, I can put in the course and help other people. So when I was interviewing at this other tech company recently, I was mainly only interviewing with other men. And it's important to me to work in a place where I'm not the only woman there. I think that's just something I know about myself. Like I want there to be other women. And so during the interview, I got my courage up and I asked, are there any other women on the technical team in this company? And I was surprised at how well my interviewers were like open with answering that question. And they shared with me that there was maybe one or two others women, but overall, like, I don't think that they didn't look down upon me for asking that question. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important when you're going into an interview to really ask the questions you want to ask about that company. Know that you're the asset. You're what the company wants and needs. And you're going to make them reach whatever business goals they have. Mm-hmm. So you are valuable, and they need to recognize that. And so when you're sitting at the table across from them, ask for what you need to do your best job at the company.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to like take up space, because if you can't do it in the interview, you're not going to be able to do it there when you're actually working for them.
Yes.
I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Even asking about, what are you doing as far as diversity and inclusion practices, or asking, is there what's the work-life balance at this company like, or how often are you expected to do overtime, things like that. What perks and benefits does the company offer? And let's see, why do most employees leave the company? Mm-hmm. So these are some bold questions, but they could get to the core. And the interview may not answer the question. They maybe lead you off to a different direction, and keep an eye out for that too, because that shows that they're not being transparent and communicative.
This is awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait to trim the video down to just that section and put it all over social media, because that's what everybody needs to hear. Those are some key questions that everybody should be asking during their job interviews. I love it. We had some more comments come in about some red flags for other people. I agree with this one. A red flag is also when you look at the reviews of the employer that other past employees comment on. Yes, but I would also take it with a grain of salt, because there are also those people who just are negative in general and say terrible things about a company just because. I don't want to give a specific example, but it certainly happens where, your management has your best interests in mind, and maybe you misunderstood a direction, or you misunderstood something about a certain program, and then instead of fixing it with your team or asking management for clarification, you just go saying negative things on social media. So if the majority of comments are this place sucks, that place probably sucks. But if it's one comment out of who knows how many others, maybe take that with a grain of salt. But still, this is a really good point.
Yeah, and even I've seen it the other way, where on Glassdoor or Indeed, you can leave reviews for the company if you leave. But I find for certain instances, especially for small companies, where a company could see what employee left that review on their page, people may share, a more positive response about a review for the company, because they don't want to look bad themselves. And really, when you're in an interview, you don't want to share, how bad your former employer was. You don't want to be that person who enters with the gossip on the tongue, So
right.
It's important to be careful about where you're sharing, how you're sharing where the toxic environments are.
I think that's a really good point that goes back to this question we had earlier. If you were in a toxic work environment and you want to avoid that moving forward, you definitely don't want to say terrible things about your previous employer, because during that interview, the person interviewing you is thinking, were you a bad employee? Are you this, that, or the other? Are you going to talk negatively about us if you leave us? So, and that's why it's super important to ask those critical questions that Jill just listed, and to, ask things like, is this part of your company's credo? Why did other people leave? What's the turnover rate? And let's see. Here is another comment. Huge red flag I had in an interview was being asked, have you ever had to handle personality conflicts with legacy coworkers? How did you solve it? I am not familiar with what it means to be a legacy coworker. Do you?
It just means that people who've been there for many, many years and maybe are there because of how long they've worked there. It's like a political type of thing, or it could be that, for example, they could be a salesperson and have a lot of sales through them, and so they're not going to be let go, but maybe they're a horrible person to work with which happens.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, that definitely happens. So would you consider the question itself a red flag?
I would maybe inquire further and be like, why do you ask? But I would also, in that case, I would really want to meet my whole team that I would be working with. If I really wanted the job, like it seemed perfect, and then I was asked this question, this is the only like pink flag I get, I'd be like, can I meet my team? And then based on that interaction with them, I would try to gauge, maybe who they're referring to, and see how I may work with them. But that's really important. Yeah.
So say you were asked this question, and then you asked to meet the team, you meet the team, and you have a suspicion that it's this one person that you're meeting. What are some questions you would ask that legacy coworker?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you really have to know yourself and your work style, and you need to know how you do your best work. It takes a lot of knowing yourself to know what work environment's best for you. Because not every work environment is best for everyone. And you can't change a work environment by yourself at all. Like if you go into a workplace saying, oh, there's these problems, but I can exude my positive energy and change everything, like that's probably not going to happen. So it's really custom to you.
That's like a relationship, right? You can't change someone.
No.
You can't enter a relationship thinking you're going to change that person for the better. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in your relationship. It's not going to happen at work.
And it's not your responsibility either.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think earlier I thought, being the only woman in this room, I have to, welcome, I don't know, be this person who does shake things up. But just knowing that by being in that space, I was making all the change I needed just by existing there. I didn't have to do any extra work or do anything extra to prove myself.
Mm-hmm. It is funny that you mentioned one of your questions was how many women work in this department, or you want to make sure you're not the only woman working in a department. For me,
woman or person of color or LGBTQ person, you want to ask.
I'm the type of person that's like, challenge accepted. Let me just turn the whole world upside down. Let me change this stigma. But that's just me. I'm, as my mom would say, what does my mom say about me? She said a lot. She says I'm intense. That's the word I was trying to remember.
Love it. Bring the intensity.
Okay, so I don't know if this is a question or just a comment. How to make a person be stable emotionally when things are changing. I did want to just kind of make a comment that you can't change anybody. You can't influence other people. You can only control yourself. I think it's something that's going to help you be successful in any situation, work or not, is having an awareness of what is within your control and what's outside of your control, and not letting things that are outside of your control dictate the kind of day that you're having, right?
Definitely, 100%.
Here's a comment. What a company, oh my gosh, it's like I'm drowning here. What a company looks is profit when they're doing that. The respect for people drops. The thing is, for a company that uses the lean should have respect for people, but that it's a tool that not many companies adopt this. So, okay. Yeah, I think what, if a company is solely cares about the bottom line, then they probably have less regard for what it means to have a healthy workplace. They probably have less regard for the well-being of their employees. So, sussing out whether or not a company is only concerned about the bottom line is another important part of the interview process in determining whether or not that's a place you want to work. So I will definitely check out this blog post after the live stream. Thank you for sharing your resources with us. I'm looking forward to it. And if you guys have any other questions for Jill, please leave your comments below. Make sure you subscribe to Industry Explorers. Make sure you check out the STEM Thrive Guides. For the STEM Thrive Guides, I would like to know, do you have packages available for schools, for high schools, or for colleges? Is it, if I were a teacher or a principal,
Yes.
would I be able to purchase your courses and distribute it to other students? Like, do you have a program for that in place, or is that something you're working towards?
Yes. So it's both. Right now, anyone can buy the course and I can sell them in bulk. And I have special pricing if you would like to buy them in bulk. And so I could provide them to anyone right now if you want them. And then in the future, I'm actually working with universities, a nonprofit called Future of Research, and I'm even in talking to different companies, HRs, to understand their problems and how my courses can help inform their curriculum development and other things. Because I think in general, right now, professional development does not have anything, like typically does not have anything about navigating harassment, bias, or discrimination. But these are in fact tools that need to be in multiple aspects of professional development, not just its own category, but also in management skills and team building skills. These are things that underrepresented people experience in the fields, but there's nothing really teaching those key concepts to them. And so I hope that with the knowledge that I've developed from my experience, and that I work with other mentors and coaches too, that I want to bring on board to help their thoughts, ideas, intellectual property serve audiences that need that information. And so I'm trying to build that connecting pipeline between the people who know how to navigate these things and have this knowledge, and the people who need that in their curriculum to make their workplaces more efficient, more productive, and more profitable.
So a lot of your courses are based on your experience as a woman in a male-dominated industry, specifically in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's what STEM stands for anybody who doesn't know. So do you work with people to address other kinds of biases? Do you work with people of color? Do you work with people in the LGBTQ community? Do you work with women who are in trades who may be experiencing these sorts of things? Are you working with people who don't know how to navigate bias and harassment and discrimination if they work for a union? Do you do consulting? Are you looking for team members? Do you do anything of that sort to, build and improve upon what you've already created?
So this is something that's really important to me, to include diverse voices in this whole business, because this is what it's founded on. And if my business model didn't mimic the kind of model that I want to see exemplified in other businesses, then what am I doing? So, and I realized that as a white woman entering this space where I only had experiences with sexism, I was missing a wealth of knowledge that other people have. And while I read so much about the experiences of Black women, of people of color, of disabled people, people with different abilities is what I should say. Sorry, excuse me for that. We're all learning these things, right? And so I'm seeking, right now, I'm so early in my business, like I haven't made a profit. I don't have money to spend on team members that I would like to bring in to bring these voices.
Mm-hmm.
But as of this moment, I'm working with different mentors and coaches who are going to be taking the course and giving me feedback on it. And then I'm going to be featuring them for future students of the course. So once you take a course, you'll have a list of verified mentors of coaches who can offer you that one-on-one support that I cannot. And a lot of these women are people of color, or even there's some men too, and Hispanic men, people who are queer. It's such a diverse group of mentors and coaches who I've been in touch with and working with. And I'm still reaching out to people who are doing so much good work in this space already and wanting to work with them. So if you are one of those people, please feel free to reach out. Like, I want to meet you. I want to hear what you're doing and help support you.
I invite everyone who is interested to volunteer their time to you, because I think your mission is wildly important. It is wildly essential. It's something that I wish was available to me as a high school student, because that's when I started working as a stagehand. It's something I wish I had access to, or even was forced to go through as a college student, because that's when I started rigging, and that's when I was experiencing heavy, heavy harassment, and when my self-worth and self-respect absolutely plummeted because I didn't know how to navigate those situations, and I just didn't recognize certain behaviors that were not good to my mental well-being, to my well-being in general. So if you would like to volunteer your time to the STEM Thrive Guides, give Jill a message, reach out to her, because this is an incredible mission. I think it is absolutely worthwhile. I do have this as one of our final topics. Would you, of course, you have these courses that is all about navigating bias, harassment, and discrimination, but is there anything that you would like to share while we're live? And again, for our viewers, thank you guys so much for hanging with us. If you have any additional questions for Jill, please submit your comments so that we can get those answered.
I guess part of the last thing I'd like to share is just that I'm very, please feel free to reach out to me. Please feel like you can ask for help, ask for support, but understand that, I have a full-time job and I'm doing this as my passion project as much as it is my business. And so I only have so much time, which is why I created the online courses, so that anyone can take it and it's not taking any more of my time, if that makes sense. And I knew that this had to exist in the world, and that's why I made it. And I think it's important, as people who are underrepresented in their field, often underestimated too, to continually focus on renewing your mind so that you're avoiding conforming to the world. And this is kind of how that book I mentioned, The Teaching to Transgress, opened. It's a quote that actually Dr. Martin Luther King meditated on, from Romans chapter 12, verse 12, that says, "Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewal of your minds." And I think with what we're seeing right now is a pivotal time for companies, and realizing that it's important to value your employees and to make safe spaces, communities for them in order to thrive as a business. And so this is a time where it's going to be not just me, not just you, everyone needs to participate, speak up for what you need in your workplace to do your best job. And if they don't take that seriously, that's not the place for you. We have some power individually that we can exercise, and focusing on imagining what reality we want to work in, what reality we want to live in, is important, rather than maybe dwelling on what's so bad about this environment. Let's create a new reality moving forward.
I love that. Create a new reality moving forward. Yes, absolutely. I would like to create a reality where I don't have to wear a bra and be sexualized for not wearing one. But
hey, you do you. I love that. I love that.
That is just me. So yes. So there's so much there. Thank you for setting that boundary. that you do have a full-time job and this is your passion project and you only have so much time to allocate to this. I want to, thank you for just, being an example of like what it looks like to set a healthy boundary. Like what a perfect time to do so.
Yeah. Again, I'm open to anyone reaching out for sure.
Sylvia says, Jill has been very supportive. Highly recommend to check her out. She has a passion to help others who have been through harassment and bias in the workplace and or school place. Thank you, Jill. That's so sweet.
I spoke to Sylvia recently. So thank you, Sylvia. Like it was such a pleasure to talk to you and meet you.
That is so wonderful. And, I was just thinking that a lot of people or a certain group of people don't, that sounds wrong, a certain group. There are just people who don't like the word safe space. And that goes back to the topic of sensitivity means you're weaker. Well, we talked about how being a sensitive person is just having emotional intelligence, and it doesn't make you weaker or any lesser. But if you are someone who doesn't like the term safe space, I would just think about, do you want to be respected as an individual? Do you just want to like be treated right? And what does that look like to you? So let's exercise that moving forward.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like the people who are most against these kinds of safe space or sensitivity trainings or these kinds of things are people who have been hurt, who have been not allowed to be whole people. And it comes from a deep place of hurt. And recognizing that and giving empathy to that, I think, is really important in moving forward, but also understand that it's not your responsibility to fix that person and really take care of yourself in that situation if someone calls you out for being too sensitive.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any last minute comments that you would like to make? We are just over an hour on our live stream, which is awesome. I've really appreciated everybody leaving their comments and asking their questions. It's been super enlightening. And, this is just another piece of content that's going to go out into the world and cultivate a culture of respect. So thank you all for tuning in. And thank you, Jill, for being with us. Again, do you have any last minute words of wisdom?
Yeah,
or questions, call to actions, whatever.
The last thing I want to say is I'm definitely not the only one working on issues like this out there. And whatever kind of attention I'm getting through this, if you're interested in this, there's so many other people in this space. And so I try to work with them regularly. You can probably find them through my Instagram, STEM Thrive Guides, but there's more people than just me out there, and we're here. If you feel alone in your workplace, we're here for you, and you have a right and you deserve to feel safe and comfortable in your work or school environment.
Thank you so much, Jill. It was such a pleasure having you with us, and thank you all for tuning in with us. Please subscribe to Industry Explorers. I'm going to do a giveaway once we reach 100 subscribers. So please click on that button. And thank you, Facebook user, who I think may be Ben. I don't even know. So thank you all again. And thank you, Jill. Best of luck to you and your mission. And I am looking to support you in any way that I can.
Thank you so much.
And explorers, thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, I will see you all on our next adventure. Take care.